Hello there and welcome to a brand new episode of Talk Music Talk with Boys. I am Boys and this is my podcast you are listening to. If you happen to be listening for the very first time, Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, both established and emerging singers, songwriters, music journalists, and even music therapists. On this new episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to Ben Rice, singer, songwriter, producer, engineer, mixer. He does it all. He runs his own music studio called Degraw Sound in Brooklyn. And Ben and I go way back. I met Ben 12 years ago when he produced and played on my debut album, How to Be an Adult. He did incredible guitar work on there. He is releasing his debut solo album, which is called Future Pretend, out on February 19th. After being in several bands, singing and fronting them, playing guitar for them, he's now doing his own thing. Great long conversation with him. What did we talk about? We talked about his getting his first guitar, songwriting, his influences, how he got into music production, opening his first music studio. We also talk about why songs are so important, how music makes him feel, letting go of preconceived notions, and of course, we talk about Future Pretend, how it got started, the making of, the motivation, and after the conversation, you will hear one of my favorite songs from it called Everything Changes. And I was excited not to just talk to Ben, but also this was my first in-person, non-Zoom interview in a year since 2020. Back in March when I interviewed Bartish Strange. We were socially distanced. We recorded this in his studio. Ben was in the control room and I was in the studio, so everybody was completely safe. Before we get to the interview though, since the release of the last episode, two past guests passed away, two previous guests. The legendary hip-hop photographer Ricky Powell, who I interviewed on episode number 33, and also pop singer-songwriter Ari Gold, who just passed away on Valentine's Day. I interviewed him on episode 189. He had been struggling and fighting a long-term battle with cancer. I also had the opportunity to produce his own podcast, which was called A Kiki from the Cancer Ward, and we became friends in the process. Just two talented people, and I feel I am just consistently blessed that I get to meet and be in conversation with so many wonderful artists, and Ricky and Ari were two of the best. I know they will rest in peace. And I'm grateful that they shared their time and talent with me. They will be missed. I will put links to the interviews in the show notes if you would like to check those out. But here it is, without further ado, my conversation with Ben Rice. Enjoy. So Ben, I was looking at your Instagram, right?
I believe you when you say that.
Yes, I'm telling the truth. Actually, you know what? Okay, I'm going to start here. There was two directions I wanted to go.
Okay.
This is where I'm going to start. I was looking back at emails to try to figure out when we met, and I found our emails from 2008.
Wow.
Yes, and we met I contacted you on March 21st, and then we set up times, and then we met April 3rd. 2008.
Wow.
To start on my album. And I never got to tell you this, so I figured this is a great time. I had two other meetings set up with producers, like one later that day and then one the next day. And then after I met you, I canceled with them.
Oh my God.
Because it just felt so right. So I just wanted to say thank you for you were it was a great experience for me.
Oh my God, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, I never got it. Always seems weird saying that to people in the context of when it's happening, though maybe we probably should and not,
Yeah.
12 years later.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to tell you that. And
I have such good memories of making that record,
yes,
man.
It was a lot of fun. And so now I'm going to jump to the initial. I'm warming you up.
Okay.
That's a warm up. But
I'm getting loose, man.
Okay, good. So on your Instagram, you had a video of you from 1991. Christmas time. Ben Rice, explain that video of you. It's adorable.
Oh my God. So over the holidays, I found like all of these old tapes, all these old family tapes, and my fiance's father has been putting together the Ben Rice archive, or the Benny tapes, as he likes to call it. And he's just been digitizing like all of these old tapes. So I was going through that stuff over the holidays, and I found that one. I just thought it was really funny. But that was the moment that I got my first guitar.
Okay. And 1991, how old were you?
I would have just turned 6.
Okay. And
I would have just turned 6.
Okay. And it's Little Ben, Christmas time, and you're singing. Simultaneously, you're singing and opening up your gift.
Yeah.
And it's a guitar.
Yes.
So you had asked for this for Christmas? Or how'd you get this guitar, dude?
I don't remember if I asked for it specifically. Probably I did.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I really wanted some toy trains. That was really my first love was to become a conductor.
Okay.
But I also was very interested in becoming a cowboy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And one of the things that I realized is that cowboys, they have guitars. So I figured because I couldn't have a horse in Brooklyn very easily, it might be a better sell to get a guitar. And my parents got me one.
Okay. So what happens next? Do they get lessons for you, or are you just like banging on it?
I think I started banging on it. It was like the following videos in that series are basically like me and my little brother, just like me banging on my guitar and like, singing along to whatever songs we were doing at the time. And my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, just like cooing along in the background. So we'll have to put out that episode as well. Yes. But I think that after, a few months of that, my parents said, maybe we should get him a lesson so that he is doing something other than just banging on this thing.
What was it like taking lessons? Like who taught you?
I hated it. It was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I should be fair to the guy. So I took lessons from this guy who was, he was a classical guitarist, and he really, really wanted me to do that thing. And I just had no interest in that. I was like, I want to play, cowboy songs as quickly as possible. So pretty much as soon as I learned chords, I remember learning like E minor, which is it's a good chord to start with.
Yeah,
it's pretty simple to play. That and like A, 1 and 4. And as soon as I had that, it was just started writing songs. And that was really what I was interested in, I think.
Is writing your own stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have to like talk your parents to like not take lessons anymore?
Not. I took lessons for a while, and I think that I was just a terrible disappointment to my guitar teacher. I remember, just going in there like every week, and he would be like, so-and-so has only been taking lessons for this long, and they could already do this, and they're so much better than you, and you'll never make it in music, and you're and I was just like, well, I don't know, But here I am, 20-something.
Nothing works like shame, right?
Exactly. So maybe it was a good motivator for me.
My grandmother was teaching me how to ride a bike when I was a kid, and she used the same tactic. Well, that person knows how to ride a bike, and you're smarter than them.
Yeah.
And I still can ride a bike, so shame works.
Yeah.
So,
so maybe he was a great teacher.
Yes. In hindsight.
Exactly.
Did you writing songs? Like, so how old would have been when you started writing a song? Or when was the first song you wrote? You're like, this is pretty good. I'm not bad at this.
Oh man, I think that the first song that I wrote was probably when I was 6, and it was called "There Was a Train."
Yeah.
It was about my other love, trains. And it just basically was, I think that all the lyrics were, there was a train in the station where people come and people go. There was a train.
Okay.
And I think that I thought that was pretty good because it made me keep wanting to do it.
What was it about trains and cowboys? Did you keep up with that, or that ended at some point?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm not obsessed with trains or cowboys anymore. I think that, as a kid growing up in New York City, I had so many experiences on the subway. And that was just like that was like the ticket to everything. If you want, like any place cool that I wanted to go, we got on the subway. So I think that there was just something in me that was like really fascinated by the people that made these trains work.
Yeah.
And it's just such an incredible infrastructure when it works, right? When it works.
Yeah, when it works. When do you start taking music serious? Like, do you have like a dream of what you want to do in music?
When did I start taking it serious? I mean, I think that I've always taken everything that I was passionate about seriously. You know, I'm a somewhat serious person.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Okay.
But I think that, so also like probably around that same time, I went to see the Bob Dylan like 30th. I think it was a 30th anniversary concert. He did this like concert at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. You were at that.
I was at that. That was my first concert.
Oh, really? Lucky you.
Yeah. So I remember who was there. I mean, I feel like everybody was there.
What is it? Pearl Jam and
Booker T.
Yeah. Sinead O'Connor. Yeah, she got booed off, right? Didn't she?
Yeah. I remember that being really confusing. I was like, man, like, why are people booing her? I was like, that seems really mean.
Yeah.
And it was. But no, I remember like Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones, like he did this, like, I don't know how I remember this, but he did this Bob Dylan song called 7 Days. And at the end of it, like, he did this strum, at least this is how I remember it, like maybe I'm making this up, where he just like does the big rock and roll strum to his like strat, you know, and he's like holding it over the audience. And I was just like, man, that looks so much fun. I've got to do that thing. So that was when I went electric. That was when I started plotting to convince my parents to get me an electric guitar and be done with this classical stuff.
Were you listening to like rock music and stuff at that point? And like, who were you listening to?
I was starting to listen to some rock music. I mean, I think when I was like a kid, I remember listening to like Willie Nelson and like, you know, cowboy songs.
Yeah.
And then I found the Beatles and Rolling Stones and like Pink Floyd and like stuff like that. And then everything, you know, that just changed everything for me.
And how were you getting turned on to this music?
Mostly my parents.
Oh, okay.
You know, those were records that they played around the house. I mean, another like big record for me as a kid was the Traveling Wilburys. I know, like, I think my parents were from that generation where, you know, that was their music.
Yeah.
So I think that record came out probably like 89 or 90 or something. And I remember like that being a big record because it was like new music that they were into. And to me, it's just like, man, these songs are so beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's kind of my musical foundation for songwriting. If you will.
Were you like, once you get rid of the classical, or you just like get rid of the classical guy, you're like self-teaching and like practicing every day? Like, what is your work ethic to get good on a guitar?
Oh man,
because people should know you're a pretty wicked guitar player.
I'm okay. I mean, I should be a lot better, honestly. I would just sit in my room a lot. You know, I remember like in the first house that I grew up in, you know, it was like in like Park Slope. It was like, I remember like sitting like just like in my bed, like looking out the window and just like spending a lot of time just sitting there with my guitar. And then, you know, my family moved out to Ditmas Park where we met.
Yes.
And, you know, same sort of thing. You know, just lock myself in my room and
just over and over
play guitar and, you know, play along with songs. And I think one of the great things about being a songwriter is that, you know, this is not really what I would advise people to do, because you should, you know, if you're going to learn to play a song, you should learn how to play it the whole way through. Yeah. But if you think of yourself as a songwriter when you're like, you know, 13 or 14 years old, you only have to learn as much of the song as you need to know that you can start ripping it off and writing your own song. Right, and that's like how all the great songs of all time have been written. It's just like, oh, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's turn that into something else. So I never really like learned as many songs or was as diligent as I should have been with that. I think it was just spending a lot of time doing it.
Okay, and how to get to writing your own stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, pretty much as soon as I could convince anybody else to come and play music with me, I was like, I have songs that we can play.
Yeah.
Come hang out with me.
Okay. So when does the studio part, like learning, production, and all that stuff, when does that come into play?
Oh, man. I mean, I think it kind of crept in early. I think I was like 14, and a friend of so I was 14 and I made a little demo CD. One of my dad's friend's son had a studio. Actually, it's around the corner from here, or it was around the corner from here until gentrification happened. And he was like this guy named Peter Carl. He was like a legendary like jazz engineer.
Yeah.
And he had me come in for 3 hours, and I was like, here's my Casio keyboard. Let me push this, and like that's my drum loop. Let me just like bang along on my guitar with that. And that became my first demo CD. But for whatever reason, one of my high school or middle school friends thought that it was good enough to play it for her mom, who knew this producer named Roger Greenwald. And, they took me down there to his studio, and I met him, and he, for whatever reason, liked what I was doing. And then I started doing some music with him. So he mentored me, when I was really, really young. And he had a track record of, he had worked with this band Radish that were I don't know if people still remember them, but they were, very buzzy in the late 90s into the 2000s. And the singer was this guy, Ben Queller. And Roger was like, "You're my new Ben. I always get big record deals for Ben's." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Sure. Let's do this, man. Do you want to record my song?" "Yes, I want to record your song." "All right, cool. Let's do this." So I think that I had exposure to that early. And then I remember my music teacher in high school got me a summer job at a recording studio. So, which basically just meant that I got to, clean the bathroom and make coffee and all those sorts of things. But it gave me a good window into what studio life was like, and I think that it kind of just planted the seeds, even if I never really thought that it was something that I was going to do.
Okay,
it was more just that it felt very natural to me, I guess.
Okay, so you're kind of simultaneously learning your craft as a musician, but also learning the studio side. And so were you somebody who would listen to a record and not just for the song, but the production and how the vocals sound and how that's recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think I was just always fascinated by the space. I spent a lot of time as a kid or teenager on headphones listening to records.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so easy to get lost in these beautiful spaces that records create. And this was back in the day when you had CDs, and it's just what CD is gonna stick with me today, and you just put that in, walk around the city, get on the subway, and then you learn a lot about just what makes you tick from listening to those records.
Okay. And what comes first? Is it, we had talked before we started recording about going to shows in the city, or I'm going to open up my own studio? How does that even come about?
How does opening up my own studio come about? Well, I mean,
that's post going to shows, or
that is definitely post going to shows. Do you want to know about going to shows?
Yeah, let's talk about shows. Are you going to these shows with friends? Are you going by yourself?
With friends.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, I mean,
going into the big city.
Get on the subway. It was my buddy, my friend Nick, who was in my first band. We grew up a couple blocks from each other, and he was just awesome, really, really cool kid. and we spent a lot of time playing baseball together. Then we both got into music and heavy into music around the same time. So the fact that we lived not too far from each other, it was kind of easier to convince our parents to say, okay, well, what if we go into the city? What if we go to Bowery Ballroom? What if we go to Irving Plaza or whatever, whatever like the venue was, right? And being totally obsessed with music, we would show up, 4 hours before the show so that we could be like one of the first 10 people in line, doors open, run to the front of the stage. And it just so happened that like at that point in, New York's music history, all of like the, blogs that went on to become really influential in that scene were also getting to the shows early. So we would just be like standing online in the rain with them. They'd be like, who are you kids? And we'd be like, we're, blah, blah. We have our own band. And they were very, very nice to us. And so I spent a lot, pretty much like, I guess from the time I was 16, started going to shows. And the fact that we were playing around, like it kind of gave us access to getting into some venues that we probably shouldn't have been into. But the bookers knew us, and the people who owned the venues knew us, and they were kind enough to let us in because they knew we wouldn't jeopardize their liquor license.
Get sloppy drunk
before
a show. And you're like in bands, you're starting bands? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all through my teenage years, man, I was in bands into my 20s. And I guess I kind of started my studio inadvertently, which was because the producers that my band was working with at the time, these guys, Gus and Werner, who also mentored me. I got lucky, got mentored by a lot of people. They were moving their studio, and they were building out a new studio. And I said, well, you can just like store your gear at my parents' house, like if you want to, like we've got space, like. And they were like, all right. So we put a bunch of their gear like in this like room next to like where you remember where like the control room was. So we put a bunch of gear in there, and that was originally just a storage room. And I'm just sitting there thinking, man, like I'm using this, like what if I just started, what if I used this as a studio? So when we moved their gear out, I just started accumulating some like little toys, and then before I knew it, I convinced my parents to be like, listen, like I'll give you $200 a month if you let me, they were like, well, you can go nuts down there. And they were not very religious about charging me to make a lot of noise there. But it was great, man. I mean, I've so many fond, beautiful memories of making music down there. I mean, Gian and I made so many records down there. Gian, who you know well, and we did your record down there. I remember like Lenny Kaye from Patti Smith's band came over. He did some stuff down there. The Mooney Suzuki were there, and it was just like kind of like in hindsight, kind of mind blowing to think about like the fact that like all these like amazing musicians and amazing minds were down there like in my parents' basement, like
because when you say no, it's literally your parents' basement.
It literally was my parents' basement.
And how long were you there?
Oh man, how long? Oh, I don't know. Maybe, well, I don't know, 7 years maybe.
Okay. And that's before you moved to the big studio. What do you learn when you're in the constraints of it's a smaller space? It's not the big, tricked out studio you're in now. What do you learn?
How important songs are. And I mean, I think that's like, I think I was a little bit ahead of the curve. Like, well, I shouldn't say that. If technology was where it is now back then, man, I never would have needed to build another studio.
Yeah.
Because you can just do so much on your laptop. You can do so much like on a small setup. I think that was still the era where like, people made you feel really guilty for having this kind of like DIY, like bootleg setup. Like I would go into another studio to do drums or do something, like, people would be like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I've got a like little, like, small project studio. And it was just like, turn up your nose to this. But I think that the thing that I learned from all of that was just how important songs are. Because at the end of the day, it's not really about the equipment. Nobody listens to a record and is like, man, I love that equipment on the record. Like, people like find out about the equipment when they like the songs, and because there's this like, this thought that, man, if I get that gear, then I'll be able to make a record like that. But it's like, unless you have those songs,
it doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
That's like when you hear people, what is it? Jimi Hendrix do? Electric
Lady.
Yeah, and people are like, oh, we recorded there, and the spirit of Jimmy was there, and it's like, well, what the hell does that have to do with your music if it's not great music? Like,
exactly.
So what, you're recording in Jimmy's old studio, right? It's about the songs.
It's about the songs, and I mean, maybe he left a little bit of juju in there.
But can you tap into that juju?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would put more into the juju side of it than into the equitment side of it.
Could your parents hear you down in the basement? Okay.
Oh yeah. They were just absolute legends when it came to that stuff. But I think that they both had spent a considerable amount of time in New York in like these sorts of like, they weren't musicians, they were like kind of like artistic adjacent fields. Like, my mom was a scenic artist. My dad did a number of things from, he was a hair cutter. He had a barbershop on St. Mark's Place in the 60s to, getting into doing like macrobiotics and like they were
pretty hip.
They were hip.
Yeah.
They were hippies. Yeah. So they were hip hippies. But I think that because of that, they were open to me pursuing these sorts of things, and it was working. It became this little hub where like nobody, I know that now like people think of Ditmas Park and they're like, oh, the National, but I was there before the National. You're right. let the record show. No, but I mean, like, I think that it became this like kind of like cool like little like haven for people. Like there were just so many like great minds that like I got to meet and collaborate with like down in that like tiny little space, and made so much stuff that I'm proud of and that set the foundation for everything that I've been able to do, really.
Yeah. So what prompted when you wanted to move to another studio where you're currently at now?
I think it was a combination of a couple of things. One was I got to a place where like I felt like I needed a bigger space in order to be able to like have a career as a producer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was necessarily true, but I certainly felt it at the time. And now I have this, it's like, this is not a massive, massive space. Yeah. Just, so everybody who's listening at home knows that, it's modest. It's, the room that Boyce is in is a beautiful 425 square foot live room, and I'm in the control room, and it's about 225 square feet. So studio wise, it's not, it's not Westlake, it's not Abbey Road, but it is a beautiful space that I'm blessed to get to work in. But I kind of felt like I needed to like have like this kind of like professional space so that I could work on better records. And I remember like the producers that I was working with, like Gus and Werner, like I remember Werner telling me, he's like, don't open a commercial studio. You don't need to do it. Just work with cool bands, just convince them to trust you. That's the way you have a career as a producer. And that's ultimately the truth. Yeah. I think that having this space has provided a lot of opportunities for me, because it's again, a studio becomes a haven for everybody that comes and works there. And I think that I've definitely had the opportunity to work with some really amazing people here as well. But I think that it was this feeling that like, oh, well, I'm getting into my mid-20s. I better do something serious and like really have a career. And also my band at that time was starting to go its separate ways. Yeah. And I could kind of feel that the writing was on the wall. And I think that, I guess for whatever reason, I felt like, it was time to get serious about having a career and that somehow being a studio owner, like engineer, producer was like the way to do that.
Okay. Were you thinking like, okay, this is, and I'm doing air quotes, a real studio?
Yeah.
Okay. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause and I guess that like hindsight is 2020 or whatever, but looking back, man, like, everybody that I talked to about Newkirk, that was, you, everybody like Gian, like all the people, my old bands, like everybody has such fond memories of that place. And we were able to do so much, like I listened to the record that we made there and man, there's just beautiful stuff on there.
Yeah.
But it's because of the tunes like we're talking about. And I think that like the whole like air quotes, like real studio thing, I think that at this point, like, people have let go of that a lot where like, most of the massive like hit songs that we're hearing are like done on a laptop in like, somebody's like apartment or like, their rented Airbnb where like people get together and like feel inspired and they're singing on the same mics that we're doing this podcast on, which are not expensive mics. So I think that, as a music making community, we've been able to let go of some of that like necessity for like real studio. The thing I will say is that for making records with bands, for making records with like real instruments, having a space has just been like so important to me. And also like having a workspace that I can get away to, even if I'm not thinking of it as like a commercial studio, even if it's just like my like hideaway where I can go and I can close the door and I can have some peace to just like let my mind go crazy. Yeah. And also to provide that for everybody that I'm working with, where it's like that door is shut, the outside world stays there, and like now it's safe. Yeah. Go as deep into the, creative wilderness as you want to go.
Well, there's something beautiful that speaks to, starting where you are, like, you had access to your parents' basement, start there, like, instead of like, okay, well, I gotta get the real studio now before I can ever start recording. And it's like, no, you can start right where you are. Yeah. So there's something great about that, like this start.
100%.
Like, don't let fear, because was it scary going from your parents' basement to, the real studio? Was there any fear in that?
It all happened so quick that I didn't really have time to be scared. And I think I feel like most of the things in my life, once they start happening, you just kind of get on this wave where you don't really have time to like stop and look back, which is great because, you don't have time to like psych yourself out. Yeah. But it all, I've been thinking about it for, a couple years. But when I finally like made the leap to do it, it just was like, all right, sign the lease on this place. And that, I was like, all right, well, I guess I have a space. Better get a contractor. All right, here's a contractor. All right, start building. And then all of a sudden, 4.5 months later, there's a studio. And it's like, all right, well, start making records. Yeah. Because I had told everybody, oh, I'll be down. Well, not because I told the contractor, as contractors do. They tell you it's going to be ready a lot quicker than it actually is ready. So I had told people that we would be up and running, I don't know, maybe in 3 months. And people were like calling me, like, Ben, like, when's your studio going to be up and running? I'm like, oh, soon, next week for like, 6 weeks of next week. But in hindsight, 4.5 months to build this place, not a lot of time. No. 4.5 months to build this place when you're in it. Okay. Felt like because
you were working eternity. As they were. Were you working as they were working around you, or you'd come in like when they weren't here?
I wasn't able to work for like 4.5 months.
Oh, okay.
So basically, I was doing some sessions like out of other studios and like, trying to not make them too crazy because I would come in and check on how they were building like every single day. But, you know, for most of the time, it was just like a construction zone where you walk in and you're like, when are you going to put up walls? We need those, you know? Yeah. All right, guys, like, why aren't you here right now? Like, get back to work. So, but I don't know. When you're in it, it all happens so quickly, and it's stressful on many levels.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I remember, like, there was no like big like ceremonial like finishing of the studio in first session. It was just like, I remember they hung like the baffles on the wall, and that was it. And they were like, okay, cool, we're done building. And I was like, okay, cool, get out of here so we can start recording.
Yeah.
And then like Gianna and I like tracked drums like for something like that same night that we'd been like waiting to track drums on for like a month. And like things weren't unpacked. Like there were like still like boxes and dust on the floor. But we were like, quick, set up the drum kit. Let's go.
What do you like about producing?
Oh man, so many things. I love that I get to work with a lot of different types of artists. I love that I get to be a part of, you know, different people's creative process. And like, I learn so much from every record that I do. I like a lot of different kinds of music. And I think that for me, it's just really, really rewarding to get to just go in on it with people. Yeah. To get to be a little part of like whatever like their creative journey is, to get to play around in a lot of different types of genres and different aesthetics. And I like being in the studio. Like I like how like slow and quick it goes simultaneously. Yeah. I like the feeling of like being able to like we were talking about, separate the outside world. Just be like, we're safe in here. Yeah. How far can we take this, you know?
What do you think people get from you as a producer? What do you give the artist?
Everything I have.
This is true.
Honestly. I mean...
You made me feel... Because that was my first album. I was like so completely nervous. And like, you know, it made it like into a comfortable experience. So I can say that. That's not a paid advertisement either, but
yeah. Oh man, we're gonna take that as an excerpt. No, I mean, I think that so much of like the relationship between the artist and the producer comes down to that comfort and that trust and feeling like the person who's on the other side of the glass really has, you know, your best interest at heart, that they have an understanding of what it is that you're trying to do, that they're going to help you get there, that they're going to push you, that they're going to be supportive. And I think that at this point, you know, like I've made so many records that I'm pretty comfortable going into the unknown. And I think that allows me to kind of suspend, you know, judgment and suspend belief long enough that you can find some really, really beautiful things. Yeah. And I think that I guess I think of it as like kind of being like this like musical tour guide. Yeah. Or like, you know, like if you were to go out into the wilderness, or you're to like go like trek Everest, like you would like have like your guide, but it's, you know, it's about you, the artist. But they're there, they've done it before. They know what that process is. And I think that for me, because I've been through the record making process so many times, I'm very comfortable with going out into the wilderness. Okay. You know, I mean, I know we both love David Bowie. Yeah. But I think, you know, I'm not going to get this totally right as a direct quote, but I know that he like talks about like going out like into the water and going out to the point where like, you know, like your feet don't like touch the bottom, and having to get there like as an artist in order to be in a space where you can really create something beautiful, when you can really like tap into like whatever that, you know, cosmic creative forces, right? And I think that for me, it's like I'm comfortable being there with the artist and letting them, you know, be out there in the water. But I can also say, hey, like, there's a wave coming. We should probably get in. We can go back in tomorrow. Well, let's bring it in now. Yeah. Or if they say like, hey, I need to spend overnight in the water, then cool. I'll tread water with you. Let's go. Let's get it.
Okay. What did you say to me? It was funny. After I did a take, and you were like, "That was good, but I don't believe you." Like, let's try it again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I know what he means. Okay, yeah, that made sense.
I mean, you got to be honest.
Yeah. What do you learn about human psychology? Because you're seeing people like in a very vulnerable state, like, before it goes out into the world, like it happens here.
Yeah.
Like it's that place between like when the song is written and before it goes out into the world, kind of.
Like, what is that
place? Like, what do you
So
learn about people in that space? Because it can be very vulnerable in the studio, like trying to get it right for the artist.
That we're all very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everybody goes through like the anxiety. Everybody goes through like the highs and the lows. Mm-hmm. Everybody, I think that if people are really like bearing their souls and they're really being honest with themselves, they're going to open themselves up to some like really, really vulnerable and emotional experiences. So, I've been there with people through a lot of those times. And I think that like, it's the same thing we were talking about, where it's just like, I've been through that. Mm-hmm. So, and I've also experienced this, myself as an artist, right? Where I'm comfortable and I'm patient with that process. Mm-hmm. And man, people are complex. People are beautiful. Mm-hmm. We're all quite different, but we have a lot of similarities. Yeah. And I think that the more the people just like are comfortable being themselves, the more that like you see how similar we are, and like how similar we are as far as like the sorts of like encouragement and positive reinforcement that we need in order to be able to like keep going. Because you're like as an artist, you're compelled to make this thing that doesn't really make any sense. Yeah. Right. But like you just have it in you, and you just like, for whatever reason, like you have this belief and this desire and this will and this love and this hunger to make this thing. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool to like see people tap into that. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're seeing like an evolution from whenever they start the project to the end. And
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. By the time you're done with the record, then you're ready to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been in the studio since what year did you start Degraw or move to?
I started Degraw 2012.
Okay, 2012. And then kind of speeding forward to last year, you making your album, because you had Surefire. You were the lead
Black Bells.
Singer and Black Bells, lead singer and songwriter. And now you're doing like a proper solo album. Why?
Because I was compelled to.
Okay. By COVID?
I mean, by COVID, but also I think that, well, there's two things. So like there's the COVID thing gave me the pause. Like, I mean, it gave everybody, right?
Whether you wanted it or not.
Time out, Ben. But I honestly, man, I mean, in my entire adult life, like I had never taken a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't think that from the time that I was like 18 until COVID hit, I had ever taken like a couple weeks off just to do nothing. Mm-hmm. I had certainly taken time off to like have a quote unquote vacation, but when I'm having a vacation, like I'm still on my phone, like I'm still talking to like people like, hey, like what's going on with your project? And there was just like nothing going on. And then all of a sudden I just started listening to music for fun again. And I started watching masterclasses like everybody did during COVID. And I just saw like how passionate like these people were about the things that they do. And something about that, like, awoke this feeling in myself where I was like, man, like I'm starting to hear like melodies again. Not, I would like write songs for other people and help them with their songs, but I started hearing things that I wanted to sing. Okay. I started hearing things that I wanted to make. And because the whole world was shut down and I had been at home, with my fiance for like, I don't know, three weeks a month, hadn't left the house, we're in a 1-bedroom.
Yeah.
And she's trying to do her Zoom calls and, be professional. Right. And I'm like, in the other room, like just like starting to noodle on guitar. So I was like, it's time to go in.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't even think like, oh, I'm going to do anything serious or I'm going to make a record. It was more just like mental exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go out. Let me just go stretch my mind out. Let me just stay loose. Let me like get these like musical ideas out. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I like that. That makes me happy. That makes me feel something, right? And then you wind up with enough of those, and then you've got a record.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it took that span of time for you to do something on your own? Had you just gotten to like the hamster wheel of working on everybody else's projects?
I think that I got onto that hamster wheel that you're talking about. And I think that I also believed a lot of perhaps untruths that I told myself or that are, commonly said, in the industry or like just like in the working world of, like the same thing where we're talking about like, oh, like I need to have a professional studio.
Yeah.
So much of being a human being is just like, there is no plan for this.
Yeah. As we saw.
Right?
Yeah.
There is no plan for this. And like, we're all making this up as we go. So like this idea that like, now it's the time to be professional in your life. And now it's time to have this phase in your life. Like, sure, like some of that is like biological or whatever, but like at the end of the day, you got to feel like yourself. And for me, making music makes me feel like myself.
Yeah.
It makes me just like feel whole. It makes me happy. It makes me inspired. And I think that I had just like shut that part of myself down for a long time because for whatever reason, I was buying into some sort of narrative that couldn't exist, that I had to just do whatever insert X is.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had a little bit of a break for the first time in, many years, it gave me a chance just to do the thing that felt really natural.
Mm-hmm. Was there any, when the break comes, like, who am I if I'm not in a studio all day producing?
Like, did I feel like a sense of like identity crisis about it? Not really, man. I mean, I think that for me, like one thing that I've noticed about myself is that I'm very like project oriented. Like, I think it's just the way that I'm very project oriented. I'm very like team oriented. I think that that's like how I was raised, playing on teams. The school that I went to was very like project oriented. Like the way that we learned was I went to a Waldorf school. It was very much just like compartmentalized, where it's like, okay, cool, like you're studying this for a month, and then you complete that project and you present it as like this beautiful like bound like handwritten book with like illustrations on it, and it's very holistic and beautiful. But in a lot of ways, that's not unsimilar to what it is to make a record. But instead of presenting it as this beautiful like bound book, we present it as like a digital file to Spotify. But I think that I am just so like project oriented, and as long as I'm making something, I feel like a sense of completion. When I was at home, man, like it would be like 3:00 and I would be like, what am I making for dinner? And I would just spend, 3 hours like cooking up like this like elaborate, like, beautiful presentation of a dinner, because just like the process of making something makes me feel good. And I think that like I tap into that same thing when I'm in the studio. If I'm like painting a room, or if I'm like, if I'm helping my fiance's dad like build me a guitar rack or whatever by standing, like there's just something about doing projects that makes me feel good. And I don't think that I was like really worried about like what my identity was at that moment. Maybe other moments, but not that.
Not that moment. Did the whole album originate, all the songs, last year, or had you had like bits and pieces of songs over the years and you went back to those?
Yeah, I had some bits and pieces. like Everything Changes, which is the first song on the record, that was kind of a turning point for me as a writer, I guess, because that was like the first song that I had written in a long time that like felt like it was pivotal to me, and I didn't really know why, but it just felt important. It felt like I was telling a story that was my own, or that was not necessarily a story that I had heard in another rock song. And I remember finishing that and being like, all right, I like this, and I don't feel like I'm telling somebody else's story.
Okay.
So that was important to me. But so that one was started, and there were a couple other songs that were started, but nothing was really nothing was anywhere like close to being finished.
Okay.
And when I came in, I just like opened up Pro Tools, and I just started like programmed in a drum beat. I was like, oh, what about this?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like once I started having a few songs, like new things I was excited about, it made me like curious to go back and be like, oh, there were some other tunes there that I liked too.
Yeah. Are you, when you're writing songs, are you on the guitar coming up with riffs, or are you chords, or are you coming up with vocal melodies? Like, is it different ways?
It's definitely, I mean, at this point it's different ways. I think that like, when I was starting as a songwriter, I would sit down with the guitar. It felt like songwriting felt very connected to me at the beginning to picking up the guitar and banging on it until like sounds came out and like the universe like blessed me with some sort of like melody and lyric idea that like came from like this feeling of pounding on the guitar. But I think that like as I've gotten older and as I've written more songs and as my life and my time is there's more that's demanded of me, a lot of the writing happens in like little fragments. I've got my whole like notepad and my phone of like, I call it compost, where it's just like any idea that doesn't get used or any idea that like seems like it's a good seed, it just goes in there. So I just am always collecting lyrics, and like, if I hear a melody comes to me like when I'm walking around or I'm in the shower or wherever it is, just like voice memo. Okay. So a lot of the process now is just like going and sifting through those things and going, maybe that was okay.
Yeah.
Let's explore that a little bit more.
So much of the song and the writing in this concentrated here. What are these songs? What do these songs say about Ben Rice? What are these songs about?
Oh man, I mean, that's the hard hitting question you promised not to ask, man. Come on. I mean, I think that I was tackling a few subjects on the record. I think that the main thing that I was tackling was just like, what does it mean to grow up, and what does it mean to like watch the world change around you? What does it mean to process some of these experiences that I've gone through, that one goes through in their 20s? What does it mean to take a look at the world around you and not be satisfied, and to disagree? And what does it mean to take a look around and be grateful for some of the things? Yeah. So I think it was just a chance for me to process a lot of those things and kind of like contextualize it for myself.
Does it feel vulnerable?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think,
not just for what you're saying, but the fact that you haven't had a project out in a long time. Yeah.
I mean, but it also feels liberating, because I don't think that there's any expectation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nobody's waiting outside of Degraw, like for me to like come out at the end of the day. And I think that that's just like a really amazing place to be, because it kind of just gives me like so much freedom, because I can do anything that I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah. And
I can take any risk. Like I can sing about whatever I want. I can do anything sonically that I want to do. And, it's really just this new world for me to give myself that license.
Yeah. Because it seems weird to me, and you can correct me if not, that you have a studio at your fingertips, that you had not been making music just like ongoing
You're right.
When you have why do you think that is?
Man. Well, I think it goes back to a lot of like, those lies that I probably was guilty of telling myself, right? I mean, we can always say that we don't have time to do something, right?
Which we learned this past year.
Yeah. Right.
If only I had time. And then we had time, and if you still didn't do it, it wasn't about the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that it was excuses like that. I think that it was like the narrative of, being like, man, I just have to be in this kind of professional headspace as a small business owner, as a, producer, whatever it is. And I think that really at the end of the day, it was just getting to the point where I'm just like, I'm just a human being.
Yeah.
That's all that I am. I'm here on earth right now. Mm-hmm. I want to do as much dope stuff as I possibly can while I'm here. And part of that dope stuff is like allowing my mind to go crazy and make some music.
Yeah.
Part of that stuff is like collaborating with other people. And, inadvertently I've become a small business owner and like the process of that. But I think it's really just about letting go of like so much of like what the preconceived notions were. And I mean, there were certainly projects that were started, that I made like, there's plenty of unrelated music from like the past, however many years, 9 years of having the studio. It wasn't as good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as real. It wasn't as honest. And I think that like I finally got to a place for myself where I was able to like hold myself to the same standard that, I hold myself to the same standard sounds wrong, but like that I was able to like ask of myself the same thing that I ask of artists that I work with, where like I was able to push myself, to have that level of like vulnerability,
It's sort of like, I just interviewed Chris Garneau, and he was saying something similar along the lines that because he believed in these songs so much that in the past he had let himself put out music that was good enough, and that it wasn't fair to these songs to just be good enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's not for me to decide like how good these are, but I can sincerely say that it's the best thing that I was capable of doing at that point in my life.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I could do something better, of course. But I really like it. I gave myself the time and the space to like turn all of these ideas over. Yeah. Look at them from a different angle, step away from them, come back to it, and really just like take the time to explore them, where I was able to like work them to a place where I felt really, really good and proud of them.
Okay. And what do you learn from years of working on other people's stuff that you bring into working on a solo project?
Patience.
Okay. Patience with yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the whole process. It just takes so much time. You think about, it's a 3-minute song, 3.5-minute song. Like, how long could that take?
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours and hours. And just trusting in the process, being okay to like walk away when things are in total shambles, and know that like I can come back tomorrow, I can open it up and I can try again. Yeah. And if I'm listening back to it and like a lyric doesn't work or like a section doesn't work, I can just let it go. Yeah. And I can write something else.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I leave anything out?
I don't know, man.
I think we covered
a lot of ground.
Yeah. Best place people should get the album. It's out February 19th. It's called, I didn't even say the name, Future Pretend.
Yes.
Okay. What does that mean?
Oh man, okay.
Or if you don't want to say that.
No, I'm glad. I
okay, you want to say?
Sure.
Because I'm going to ask you what something else means too, but.
Okay. Sure. Is this like rapid fire like question?
Okay, take that. Future Pretend.
Future Pretend.
Yeah.
Future Pretend it's a lyric in a song called The Hard Road. And it was just came out of this idea of just being like stressed out and having all of the anxiety about like this pretend version of like the future that does not exist.
Yeah.
It does not exist. Like we're not there. And I think that I guess that's a nice way to like summarize like a lot of the things that we're talking about with like the ideas of like buying into some sort of false narrative. Like I have to be, you know, this idea that we have to be these certain things. And so much of that, man, is just like this anxiety about something that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, yeah. And we make ourselves so miserable about this future we've created that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's it.
Yeah. So in your press materials, I love this expression, Big City Americana.
Yes.
Yes. Big City Americana is...
What does that mean?
Means to you. What does that mean to you?
Well, so I mean, I guess Big City Americana... I'm kind of dropping the ball on this one, man. I should know it. It's in the press materials. But well, it's a longer answer. But you know, a lot of the music that I've made has, at least as I'm getting older, right, has gotten lumped into like Americana.
Yeah.
That's what, you know. If you played rock and roll and you get old, then you make Americana. That's just what it is, right?
By law.
Yes, it is in the musician's rulebook. That is what happens. But no, I think that for me, as far as like finding like an authentic way to express myself, I love Americana music.
Yeah,
I love rock music, but I'm from New York City. Like, I'm not going to like go out there and pretend that I'm, you know, making some music as if I was like, you know, on the Appalachian Trail or like in the hill country or something. Those are beautiful places. That's not where I'm from. That's not in my blood. It's not in my core. And I think that like this idea of like, if you think about Americana as like what the dictionary definition is, as opposed to what the musical genre definition is, man, there are all these things like in New York City and in like, you know, big cities that have those elements of like being vital and classic to America, and like I wanted to tap into that, and I wanted to make a record that felt like a New York City record.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good explanation.
Thanks, man.
It's a great album, dude. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, boys.
When you sent it to me, I like listened to it. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is good. I like this.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate you so much.
Sure. This was a great pleasure, Ben. You know, I always say that if you want to get to know someone, interview them, because there's so much about you that I didn't know.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I mean, you asked some amazing questions, and I'm glad that this gave us an excuse to catch up a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ben. Best place for people to keep up with you online?
All the usual spots.
Yeah.
BenRiceMusic.com, at Ben Rice Music on Instagram, and follow Ben Rice on Spotify.
Yes, and you can check out Degraw Sound online, right?
Oh, yeah. Degraw Sound.
Take a tour, right? You can still take a virtual tour.
Yeah,
right?
There's a ton of photos on there.
Excellent, Ben. This was wonderful. I wish you all the best and a great 2021.
Thank you. You too, man.
Thank you.
I don't recognize my city. Oh, must be aging. I better do something before everything changes. I used to walk around all day just to try to see the strokes. Settle for some two boots.
And that was Everything Changes from Future Pretend by Ben Rice, out February 19th. You should get the album. It is great. You will enjoy it. A big shout out to Gian Stone, producer, songwriter, who we mentioned in the interview. I talked to him on episode 217. If you would like to check that out, link in the show notes, of course. For more podcast information, check out talkmusictalk.com. You can stream every single episode there. You can also find me on Instagram at thisisboys, so follow me there. Some requests for you. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, iHeartRadio, pretty much everywhere. Spotify. Also, you can now find the podcast on Amazon Music and Audible. Just search for Talk Music Talk. Wherever you happen to listen, please leave a 5-star rating and or review to help expose the podcast to brand new listeners. You can also download the Talk Music Talk app. It is free wherever you like to get your apps. Just search for Talk Music Talk. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.